That's a Cheslatta number 5 reserve, and this is a church that our people built. They were shocked to hear that they had to leave.
I was born around here. I was born right here too. So it used to be full of trees, just green as anything. That's where our smokehouse used to be, and a barn over there. And then our root cellar is around the corner right here.
But we had a base house out there, and they just push it over with the cart and they burn it all up.
"39 years ago, this place was home to the Cheslatta people, a small native Indian band up here in the lake country of northern BC. Now, there's nothing here. What happened to the Cheslatta, what drove them from this country in 1952, is a remarkable story. It began in the spring of that year when the Cheslatta found themselves in the path of what was described at the time as the biggest project in all Canada.
Today, there is change, and with expanding industry, the need is for power. The rivers, lakes, and...
Alcan was building the world's largest aluminum smelter at Kitimat in northwestern BC.
City of the future, where ultimately will live 50,000 people.
The company built a hydroelectric power station at Kamano to fuel that smelter. And to get the water it needed to drive the generators at Kamano, it literally reversed the flow of a river, the Nechako River, by building a dam. That dam, the Kenny Dam, cut the flow of water to the Nechako River and put at risk one of BC's major salmon fisheries. Under government pressure to save those fish, Alcan created a reservoir to feed water back into the Nechako. To do that, it flooded an adjoining series of lakes, among them Cheslatta Lake.
There comes helicopter.
So you had no warning?
No.
In 1952, Abel Peters was one of the few Cheslatta who spoke any English. Peters had been in the Canadian Army and was wounded on the beaches of Normandy. But for most of the Cheslatta, contact with the outside world was minimal.
The only white man we see around here was the priest. He comes around here once a year in March time.
But on the 3rd of April 1952, it was officials from Alcan and the Department of Indian Affairs who came around. They came to demand the immediate surrender of the Indians' land. Abel Peters served as interpreter. And that meeting was held here?
Right.
And what happened at the meeting?
Well, they told us we're gonna move your people out of here so we can. They're gonna send us to a grassy plain area or someplace like that, you know.
That was the first the Indians had heard of plans to flood their villages. Nothing was settled then, but just 5 days later, Alcan began flooding Cheslatta Lake anyway. 2 weeks after that, with the lake waters rising, Alcan and the Department of Indian Affairs, the DIA, returned, offering compensation. The Indians at first said no. What did they say when you refused their first offer of compensation?
Well, they told us if you don't move, you're not going to get no compensation, they told us.
By the next day, the surrender of the lands was complete. The Indians claimed they were coerced into signing this and other surrender documents.
You're going to have lots of money, they tell Dad. And Dad said, okay, and he signed, I think.
Mary Quaw's father was a Cheslatta chief at the time. She says not all the compensation he was promised was delivered.
My dad asked the DIA, where's the money you offer us? You're going to give us more money. We don't know about it. That's all they say, and they won't.
The last day we're going to move out, and then they told us that we're going to get 129,000 when all the band, like, you know, and then when we move out, and then they told us that we're going to get the other 129,000 is going to be in Ottawa. That's what they said.
Peter says the band only ever got half the money it was promised. And he says the band was forbidden at the time from making its own record of what was transacted.
No written papers or anything.
That's the way they work it. Everything was crooked all the way. That's the DIA and Alcan together. They were together. DIA never stick with us. He's against us all the way.
Cheslatta Lake would only be flooded for 3 years, long enough for the Kenny Dam to be completed, but long enough too for the Indians' graveyards to be flooded. Alcan moved 4 graves and built this cairn. It then affixed this plaque, forged from aluminum. But hundreds of other graves were flooded. Finally, Alcan feared that the 70 Cheslatta who left might try to return to their homes. So the company hired contractors to burn the villages to the ground. One of the contractors was Don Piper.
They said, well, we got to burn all the buildings down. Well, there was no one there, you know what I mean? Everybody'd moved out, of course. There was a big church there, and we didn't burn it down. I just said, well, I'm not going to burn the church down, you know, and just leave it. But a few years later, we went to, they phoned me from Kitimat to meet the helicopter in Burns Lake. And we took the then Indian agent out with us, and he went out and burned it down.
We purchased them outright and paid for them and weren't going to have our own use for them. And for whatever the judgment was made, they weren't going to be of any value, so get rid of them and clear the land.
Bill Rich is Alcan's vice president for British Columbia.
We can't change history of 40 years ago, and I don't think that there's anything what I've seen to be ashamed of or embarrassed the way Alcan officials behave. To say that we do things differently now than 40 years ago is stating the obvious.
Yeah, this is Cheslatta Lake, and a beautiful lake it is. Yeah, but we used to live actually right down here on Utsa Lake.
The Cheslatta Indians weren't the only people affected by Alcan's project. But white settlers like rancher Harold Nicholas say they were given plenty of notice of what was planned. You became aware of Alcan's project when?
Oh, I think in 49, they were, the people came through, their PR people came through in succession to kind of brief us that possibility was pretty good that we were going to have to learn to live underwater or move.
Likewise, Alfred and Alice Harrison, farmers at the time, got much more advance warning than the Indians.
Oh, I would say at least a year, wasn't it? Maybe more than that.
Yeah, I didn't
When they
think that. I
started
don't know.
talking about it, I would say a year at least.
And the Harrisons think the $30,000 they received from Alcan was fair compensation.
There's lots of things you can't be compensated for when you're moved from a place you've been for 40 years. But as far as the cash price went at that time, we thought it was quite good.
Harold Nicholas got $25,000.
I think we were well compensated as far as the real estate at that particular day, and those dollars, they were substantial.
Number 6.
The Cheslatta today, only about 50 kilometres away from Cheslatta Lake, but a world away from their traditions.
Bingo. We have a bingo.
There might be luck of a sort to be had here at the band's hall in Grassy Plains. Luck, but not much hope.
I'll make a mud balloon.
Forced off their lake, the Cheslatta were settled on several reserves scattered over a wide area. Now, there are 103 Cheslattas left here, and their decline has been as tragic as it is typical of native life across Canada.
In Cheslatta, before we moved, our people never depended on any governments or any other people outside help.
Today, Marvin Charlie is chief of the Cheslatta.
Now the drinking is really, really bad. It's I don't know just how to put the words to it. We want them to correct what they did wrong to us.
More than 30 years after they were forced to move up here to Grassy Plains, the Cheslatta finally confronted the government. In 1984, they filed a specific claim seeking redress for what had happened to them in the past. By 1989, Alcan had agreed to give back most of the land it had taken. But last year, negotiations with the federal government broke down. So now the Cheslatta are suing the federal government for compensation.
We did agree to negotiate the claim with the band, and unfortunately the band chose to break off negotiations.
Peter Vrankovic is the Department of Indian and Northern Affairs negotiator handling the Cheslatta file.
We had made an offer, and we thought it was a fairly fair offer to that point in time, which included cash compensation, plus land, plus a commitment to set aside additional lands that they're going to get back from Alcan as reserves. So it wasn't just money that the band was after.
Last year, the Cheslatta were asking for about $2 million. The government was offering about half that. But when this man, Mike Robertson, took a closer look at the historical record, the Indians decided they could make a case for even more money.
The documents we have dated the day of the surrender that they supposedly took down there are all false.
Robertson, a researcher for the band, says not only were the Cheslatta not properly compensated, some of them never agreed to surrender their lands in the first place.
The signatures dated the day of the surrender are in fact fraudulent. We've proven that. The people themselves say they didn't sign the documents.
That your mark?
No.
Is that your mark?
No.
You're quite sure? You didn't make that mark?
No, I don't make a sign.
Alexei Jack was at the surrender meeting in 1952. 3 documents from that day bear an X beside his name, a mark he says he never made.
No.
In fact, Alexei Jack says he's always been able to sign his own name.
Our ex-Chazinle. No.
Michelle Charlie, a band councillor at the time, concedes he signed his name once, with a cross, as he was taught to do by the priest. But he says he never made this mark, an X, that repeatedly appears beside his name.
Yeah, that's different from the way he makes it.
It's different?
Yeah.
Out of 56 documents, I found 92 forgeries.
Don Brown is a retired RCMP superintendent, a forensics expert who was asked by the band to examine the surrender documents.
In examining the X's themselves, it's my opinion that out of the 92 so-called marks of the Native Indians, these were in fact done by one person, and done by a person who is a good penman.
Look at the strokes all the way through, the sequence of strokes. Similar. I found this kind of thing running throughout all of the question documents. That was indicative to me that one person, in fact, wrote all of the X's on the question marks, on the question documents, not any of the Native Indian people.
That information is only information that's been recently submitted to our legal counsel.
And you haven't had an independent analysis done of these signatures or of the claims of forgeries?
No, we haven't. But rather than dwelling on the past, we'd really like to negotiate a settlement of the claim with the band and to get on to the future so the band can think about the future in developing its lands and put this behind it.
For Pat Edmonds, to return to this beach on Cheslatta Lake is to reclaim at least some of his past.
And so how old were you when you had to move from here?
I was around 12, 13.
So you remember?
Yeah. Our barn used to be right here.
And so the house was just up here?
Yeah, that's right there. We'll put all our stuff back there. See some of the things. I'll show you. I'll show you where we put all our stuff back in the bush. It's higher. This is the sleigh that we haul hay with it. It's really heavy duty.
Today, there are only skeletal remains of the settlement where Edmonds and his sister Evelyn Tom were raised.
That's where our garden used to be. That's where it's full of willows. Well, it's just confusing. It's really confused. I don't think my grandchildren would like to live around here. I don't think so.
What the Cheslatta see here now is a mess. They see a lake damaged by silt, a lakeshore clogged with snags and driftwood. But for the first time in decades, the Cheslatta also see hope here. Their dream is not to resettle this place, but to redevelop it. With the settlement they hope to get from the government, the Cheslatta talk of wilderness trails here, of tourists, perhaps a fishing lodge. of jobs for the next generation of Cheslatta. In short, a focus and a future. It's not the intention of the Cheslatta people to reinvent themselves here. They don't want to relive the past. Rather, they want recognition that they were wronged. Only then can they move on. And ironically, the dramatic way in which they were dispossessed of this land may yet work in their favour. In the ensuing 40 years, there has been no development here. There are no obstacles to the Cheslatta re-establishing their connection to this land and rediscovering a sense of purpose in their lives. For the CBC Evening News, I'm Ian Gill at Cheslatta Lake.